Hi, friends. I'm Janet Williams. We at Women of Grace are dedicated to the authentic Catholic spiritual formation of women. It is to this end that we offer you Grace Under Fire to expose the darkness of false spiritualities and contemporary trends.
Hello, welcome back. My name is Sue Brinkman, and I'm the Director of New Age Research at Women of Grace. The infiltration of New Age concepts into the Christian faith is very subtle and difficult to spot sometimes, particularly by those who haven't brushed up on their catechism lately. But nowhere is this more true than the area of prayer. For example, let's take a look at centering prayer today. A mixture of Eastern and Western meditation techniques, centering prayer has become one of the most popular forms of prayer in retreat houses and parishes across the country. Now, proponents' literature says this method of prayer is used to prepare the faculties to receive the gift of contemplative prayer. Now, at first glance, that sounds fine, but a closer look reveals aspects of centering prayer that some experts find very disturbing, most especially its origins. The idea of centering prayer began in the late 1960s at the height of the transcendental meditation craze. George Harrison was singing the praises of Ravi Shankar and Sri Krishna, while Mia Farrow and Donovan were hanging out in the Mahesh ashram. At about the same time, in St. Joseph's Abbey in Spencer, Massachusetts, a Trappist abbot named Thomas Keating and his monks, they were exploring the era of interreligious dialogue that followed Vatican II. So that was between the years of 61 and 81. During that time, they held dialogues with Buddhist and Hindu representatives in their abbey, as well as a Zen master who would give week-long retreats to the monks once or twice a year, and they did that for 9 years. A former Trappist monk who had become a transcendental meditation teacher also gave sessions to the monks. Now, after exploring all these traditions, Keating asked his monks, hey, let's devise a way to win Christians back to the faith, because too many of them, they're going to the East for what can be found at home. And he suggested that they put the Christian tradition into a form that might appeal to people who had been instructed in an Eastern technique, with the hopes that they could inspire them to return to their Christian roots. This is how centering prayer was born. Now, the method most widely used today combines methods of prayer derived from the Christian mystical tradition, as well as Eastern meditation practices in which Keating and his monks were, as you just heard, deeply involved. The marks of both Eastern and Western influences in centering prayer, very easy to spot. For instance, centering prayer, the person chooses a sacred word or a mantra, which becomes a symbol of their intention, they say, to consent to God's presence within. And after finding a comfortable position, they close the eyes and then they begin to repeat the mantra whenever thoughts or feelings or reflections enter the mind, with the hope of achieving an inner quiet, is what they call, that can serve as a prelude to contemplation. And this method of prayer is practiced 20 minutes in the morning and in the evening. Now, this bears a remarkable resemblance to transcendental meditation, which also is practiced 20 minutes in the morning and at night, and uses a mantra to erase thoughts. Both TM and centering prayer claim that one will pick up vibrations through meditation and teach one how to achieve an altered level of consciousness. They also share the common goal of finding one's God center. However, proponents of centering prayer rarely discuss these Hindu roots and deliberately use different language to describe what is essentially the same thing. For example, they substitute a sacred word for the mantra, even though the sacred word is used for the same purpose as the mantra, letting go of all thoughts, impressions, and feelings during the time of prayer. Now, by sweeping away the language and looking at the process itself, the discerning Christian can clearly see the underpinnings of non-Christian prayer forms in centering prayer. For example, if a so-called sacred word is used to rid the mind of all thoughts and feelings, that is doing the same thing as a mantra. But just because it adopts from Hindu or Buddhist practices, that doesn't necessarily make it wrong. You can adopt what is good from other religions, says Cardinal Ratzinger in 1989. He says, so long as the Christian conception of prayer, its logic and requirements are never obscured. It's a very important caveat. It's not possible to incorporate techniques such as mantras from other religions that are radically at odds with the purpose and goal of authentic Christian meditation. Now, Christian meditation, our goal is dialogue with God. It's not to sit in an empty void. And as Cardinal Ratzinger explains, he says the mind-emptying techniques prescribed by these forms of meditation are not designed to bring about an ever-deepening love of God and neighbor, which is the intent of Christian prayer. Rather, their intent is to create a kind of mental void, which is described in the Catechism as an erroneous notion of prayer. As Cardinal Ratzinger writes, Naturally, we want to forget the world in order to concentrate solely on God, but the various emptying techniques don't go this far. They stop at the emptying. The emptying becomes the goal. Therein lies the problem. Now, after years of experience in the spiritual direction of thousands of people, renowned author and retreat master, the late Father Thomas Dubay, said in an interview with me that contemplative prayer cannot be achieved through techniques such as those in centering prayer. It's just not possible. First, he said, because it's unnatural to empty the mind. The mind is made to be in touch with reality. That's why we have a mind, to be in touch with the world around us. Second, he said, it flatly contradicts what Scripture says about prayer. In Psalm 1, verses 1 and 2, we read, "Happy the man who meditates on the word of the Lord day and night," which is exactly the opposite of centering prayer. Third, he said, it impedes beginners from getting to contemplative prayer because the way it actually happens is a deepening intimacy with the Trinity that takes place over time. And if you are in contemplative prayer, centering prayer is a hindrance, because if it's real contemplative prayer, God is giving you the knowing, loving, desiring, thirsting. And your method of trying to work with a mantra is impeding what he's trying to give you. In other words, if you're reciting the mantra that chases away thoughts, you're chasing away thoughts from God too. So centering prayer can certainly be used as a prelude to contemplative prayer, but proponents need to revamp their teaching to include the real steps required, such as the transition through the different stages of prayer, all of which require ever-deepening conversion of heart. As Father said, you don't get intimate with God until you're deeply converted, until you've gotten rid of mortal and venial sins, then go on to heroic virtue. Proponents of centering prayer need to teach all this, he said, because you're not going to get to contemplative prayer until you're deeply converted. Once we've progressed in meditation, combined with an ever-deepening embrace of gospel living, he said, God then gives you what you cannot produce, contemplative prayer. He gives it when you're ready. For more information, visit womenofgrace.com.
If you would like more information on how you can participate in a Women of Grace study, contact us at info@womenofgrace.com. Listen to Grace Under Fire every Wacky Wednesday on Women of Grace Live at 11 a.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio.